My name is Ravi Shankar. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Denodo. Joining me today is Mike Ferguson, a well-known thought leader in the data management space. I've known Mike for the last 12 years. Mike, happy to have you here.
Nice to be here, Ravi. Thanks for the invitation.
You're welcome. So you're here for the Denodo Data Fest. Very glad to have you. It was a great presentation on the modern data strategies. So can you kind of tell us what was your message to the audience today?
I think the message was really about digital transformation and the implications or impact of that on data, both from an operational standpoint and an analytical standpoint, and how a kind of fallout, if you like, from digital transformation was that it's increasingly creating more complexity. I think the first side, on the operational side, I talked about how we're now seeing customers, for example, directly interfacing to applications from mobile devices rather than talking to an employee who's connected to an application. And so therefore there's very little time to engage a customer, and also the only thing that can engage them is an application. And so therefore the applications, A, have to become customer intelligent, and B, have to get low latency data in order to know everything that they can about a customer to be able to service a customer's needs. So with operational processes being now hybrid on cloud and on premises, that means that the data is in multiple places that's potentially needed for operational use by, say, a customer directly off of their device. And so there's a need to integrate that. The second problem I pointed out is the fact that digital channels are now generating a huge amount of data. Such as things that tell you more about customers. Good example being Clickstream, for example. And so as a result of that, that kind of data is being ingested into other kinds of data stores other than your traditional data warehousing systems. And so, again, if you want to pull together all of the insights needed about a customer in a timely manner and bring it back for a customer to, or for an application to leverage in terms of engaging a customer, bearing in mind a customer's talking to an app now, not to a person, then potentially we need ways to do that. So we one way to handle the operational problem is to use data virtualization there. And two, on the analytical side, is to use it there. So the way I was trying to portray the issue in my presentation is, yes, digital transformation is absolutely happening and needed for all kinds of good reasons, primarily to operate in a more efficient way and to produce more data that gives you more revenue earning opportunities. But the side effect of it is potential more complexity. And if you still expect us to become, or organizations to remain agile, and to be able to respond in a landscape where data is becoming more fractured, then we need a technology like data virtualization to fill that void.
All right, very well said. Most of the audience here you saw were on the technical side, but I've always wondered, data is a strategic advantage. Who do you think from the business side should be taking note of these things? Is it the CEO? Is it the CMO? Is it the CIO? Who do you think should be paying attention to this?
It's a good question. I think it's pretty clear now that analytics, the need for analytics is in the boardroom. And actually a recent survey that I've been doing is beginning to reveal that we're seeing chief data officers being appointed, but not necessarily all into CIOs. Far more, at least from my research, is indicating that CDOs are now reporting directly to CEOs. So there's clear business ownership here. Whereas that's probably almost nearly double what I'm seeing in terms of CDOs reporting to CIOs. But I do think perhaps as these systems come together and companies become more familiar and get all of the components together in a more mature setup over time, then we may see that shift away from direct CEO involvement to perhaps one of the other C-level executives having a CDO report to them. But without a doubt, totally convinced business ownership is there. It's in the boardroom. I do think probably right now, though, that with regards to analytics, we're still seeing a lot of siloed teams. And so there's still opportunity to have a much more integrated program of analytics tied into business strategy. And I kind of think that, it's always been the case, in my opinion, at least even with BI, was that the most successful BI deployments were if there was alignment with business strategy. And I still think here, even with data projects and analytics projects, that if you still maintain that, then what you're doing is delivering data and the insights that can potentially come from it to achieve strategic business goals that have high priority in the boardroom, and that's always going to get attention at the executive level. So for me, without doubt, a very strong business ownership right now.
Mike, you framed that really well. I'm wondering, in terms of verticals, are there certain industries that you actually see that where the problem is more acute, they are taking more action than other verticals, or is it same all across the board?
So what I am seeing without a doubt is that almost all verticals are becoming customer-centric, and there's a big push to be able to do that. But I certainly think that vertical industries that are consumer-oriented, retail being an obvious one, telcos being an obvious one, have become very, very big on this, because it affects them on a continuous basis. And they're seeing the power of a customer and the ability to switch on a continual basis. And so for that, they're giving it more attention. I think also financial services have always been up there as a big leader, and certainly here in the UK, financial services has is a big slice of our economy, if you like, and so in that sense, I think financial services also, but it's not just doing it for customer-oriented reasons; it's doing it for things like fraud reasons. But without doubt, I would probably pick out retail, telco, and financial services as the ones that I'm seeing.
Okay, got it. Mike, you travel all around the world and been to many conferences. You kind of see. Where do you kind of rate or rank the technology maturity, like between the United States, here in Europe, and in Asia Pacific, as in the field of data management, data integration? Is there a certain pattern that you see?
That's a good point. I think that varies across vertical, not just geographic region. Obviously, there are compelling factors. Compliance is always a big stick pressure that's pushed on to organizations no matter what part of the world you're in, and we're now right in the middle of one with GDPR. But I think the cultures are different in different parts of the world. The United States I always see as rapid innovators, as organizations there tend to be well prepared to take risk and run with it, and be prepared to fail fast and move on kind of deal. Whereas in Europe, perhaps they're a bit more cautious. Particularly, I think UK is maybe a bit similar to the US, Germany, much more cautious, more careful, but often tend to be more successful with projects first time around, and so don't necessarily go through too many project failures. So, but I would certainly think that right now, at least in Europe, I would probably put Germany and UK would be leading economies. And of course there are, when I say the UK, I don't necessarily purely mean UK. I think there are other countries very close to us here, let's say the Benelux and the Nordics, that are tied kind of into what I would call a UK market. Very often you'll see folks from those countries turning up here in London But I do think for sure that's what I'm seeing. But I do believe that the speed of adoption can be faster in, say, the U.S. than it would necessarily be here. But there tends to be a bit more focus on, especially as you go into mainland Europe, closer into Germany, a bit more focus on the planning side before adopting the technologies to try and fail less than, less than in other areas. That doesn't mean failure is a bad thing. It just means that rather than fail fast, they'd prefer not to fail at all. And so for that reason, I think the culture is different. But I do think that adoption now is pretty strong here in Europe. And we're seeing a lot of success stories as were presented here at the DataFest conference this morning.
Okay. All right, very good. The culture aspect, that's a very good answer. One final question. So a lot of people out here, to attend and learn, what kind of a career advice you would give them in this field of data management? Data is exploding quite a bit. What is it that they should do to kind of enhance their careers?
I think they have to become far more business savvy. I'm seeing projects around data management succeed most if they're aligned with business, and therefore there's a lot of data management professionals out here, and they're super good people, but generally business is becoming IT savvy faster than IT is becoming business savvy. And if there was one thing I would say to a data management professional in IT, it's get into the business side and learn your business way more than you do. Because the big challenge is communicating the impact to the business, and there's a gap there. I also think, for example, self-service data preparation, which is gaining momentum at the moment, is pent up. That is to say, there's a lot more demand than people doing it, but the reason they're not doing it is because in business there's not a lot of know-how on how to do that, and therefore how could they exploit data integration. So for me, for example, I'm a big fan of getting at least some folks in business trained up on data virtualization to allow them to do rapid prototyping and get things moving in their respective business units in order to deliver value quicker. But I would absolutely think data management professionals should look at how multiple data management technologies integrate. They should look at how to get the maximum shared metadata across these technologies, but also how to become far more business savvy than they are.
All right, very good advice. Well, with that, we conclude this session. Thank you very much, Mike. It was great talking to you, and thank you for presenting at the Dinner to Data Fest.
Okay.